think I just pooed my pants. Today, my friends, I want to talk a little bit about the cycle that parents can get locked in with their children. I hear from so many parents who just feel like they don't really like their kids and their kids don't really like them, or that they only relate to each other in one way, and it feels like they're kind of trapped in this kind of cycle of responding to each other. One of the most common cycles, I call it the nag and the shrug cycle. So it's when the mother is like, nag, 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 pick up your socks, put your dishes here, don't speak to me that way. And the kid starts to respond by just kind of shrugging or rolling the eyes or just having like a little bit of an attitude. And sadly, I think this nag and shrug cycle is pretty common. And it makes me feel really sad because I actually feel like there's so much potential for the parent-child relationship to be very, very fulfilling for both, to be filled with love, joy, playfulness, connection. I really do think that that is possible. It needs a little bit of information about how the brain works. It needs a little bit of our creative imagination. So that's what this video is all about. A couple of years ago, I read a book that it's almost become one of my go-to reference books for relationships. It's called 4 Ways to Click, and it really looks at what's going on in your brain when it comes to relationships. One of the things I found really fascinating and could apply really quickly to my role as a parent was this idea that your brain wires itself according to the way you usually relate to someone. Your brain literally builds infrastructure in order to support your most common ways of interacting. That's really depressing if the ways that you most commonly interact aren't the ways that you actually want to communicate or respond. So let's just say that 10 or 15 times a day you have to remind your kid to do something. Your brain, the helpful muscle that it is going to, when you see with your eyeballs your kid's beautiful face, it's going to send a message into your brain to say, oh, remind them of something. Remind your kid to pick up their socks. And then your whole body and tone and your whole energy will respond to this little message and go, yeah, probably do need to nag them about something. Your brain is assisting you in being a helpful, reminding sort of a mum. It thinks it's being a legend. But actually, when it comes to your kid, or say a loved one, you don't want to be locked into a pattern. You don't want to see their face and immediately think, oh, I nag them. You want to see their face and think a whole myriad of things. You want to see their face and be filled with love, or see their face and have a spark of energy and joy and fun, because that's someone that your brain is wired to connect with. It is genuinely a really helpful function. It helps us build relationships. So when we make a connection with another human and we see that person, say we go on a few dates, if we keep having fun with that person, our brain will wire itself to see their face and think, oh yay, I have a lot of fun with this person. And immediately your body will relax and get totally chilled out, and you'll be open to the endorphins that want to flood your body, simply by your brain doing a great job at that. So somehow we need to hack this idea with our kids. We need to make it so that instead of when we hear their voice we think, oh, I'm a very responsible parent, I've got to do something important and responsible to help my kid. We hear their voice and we go, yay, let's play, or yay, let's laugh. I mean, that might be slightly unrealistic to constantly be responding in that way. But I do believe we can hack this neuroscience to get ourselves out of that cycle of nagging and shrugging. And if you think about it, exactly the same thing is going on with your kid as well. If most of your communication is with them feels like you're constantly asking them to do stuff or to not do stuff, or is only about like giving them food or making sure they're drinking enough water and eating the right sorts of food, when they see you as well, it's going to affect the way that their brain responds to you, and they're probably not going to come looking for fun and playfulness and connection with you. particularly as they get older, I think you see this. So we need to do something to help our brain's wiring kind of rejiggle itself and reconfigure and come up with the wiring that will help us be flooded with connection and joy when we see our kids. There's a psychologist who works particularly with kids called Oliver James who came up with this technique of love bombing, and I think there's probably lots of reasons why love bombing works, but I think that the neuroscience I've just described is probably a part of it. He came up with this idea particularly for kids who have been through some trauma or who are really struggling, and it was sort of like a desperate measure to try and reform the attachment between parent and child. And what you do is you wake up one morning, it's a designated day, and you do everything that kid wants to do. So wherever it is they want to go, whatever it is they want to eat, you just say yes. It's basically a big fat day of yes. And they design the whole thing, you just go with the flow, go along with it, and you buy a little token for them that they can remember the day by. And it's sort of meant to just flood them with connection and love and joyfulness and playfulness. And he says it's actually incredibly effective, like parent relationships that have been really tricky for a while begin to feel nurturing again. Kids that have been really wayward start responding to empathetic boundaries and stuff like that. So he's found it really powerful. And there's also a lot of literature around the idea that you should spend half an hour doing something one-to-one with your kid every day, whatever it is they want to do. It's like they choose the games, they choose the activities for this half an hour. It's sort of like a parenting tip 101. And I think it's all related to this because you're helping your brain not to just relate to your kid in one particular way. But for half an hour every day, you're connecting with them around things that they love. One thing I would really add to that is that if you can find stuff that you love as well, that's going to rewire your brain. So it's not just going to rewire their brain. So things we do on a regular basis, often a few times a day, dance parties, having shared playlists that we all enjoy. We do wrestling, we have baths together, we go on walks together and just hang out in the outdoors. And we also have a huge amount of silliness. I can't rate silliness enough. My friend Emily, who's just brilliant, told me the other day that she realised that her 9-year-old kid is a bit of a trickster. And she realised that in order to keep fostering their connection, she's going to have to kind of up her trickster game as well. So she said the other day, just completely out of the blue, while she was sitting there with her kid, she just went, "Ooh, I think I just pooed my pants." And her kid was like, and like came round and like felt her bum. And they just were like killing themselves laughing. And it's exactly the kind of random silliness that I think our kids would love to see a bit more of in their parents. One of my kids is a very bombastic kid. I've spoken about her amazing wild spirit before. But when she was like a toddler, if she didn't want to do something, she was not doing it. There was and she's amazing because she's made me the parent who I am, because I really had to be intentional and really think about how I was going to relate to her. Would I actually force her to put socks on? Would I? And this whole kind of dynamic, because I really didn't want to force another human to do anything, brought me to Playful Parenting by Lawrence Cohen. And there's loads of techniques in there for being very playful. So basically, I learned really early on that you can't just be like, right, let's pop your socks on. With some children, it has to be like, ooh, can the little rabbits find their bunny holes? It's all about doing crazy voices and being a bit melodramatic. Singing! We sing a lot. Like, if there's stuff that I want to remind my kids of, like technically a nag, if I sing it or do it in a very, very broad accent, it changes everything. I think it changes my energy because I come to it with a lot more joy and silliness, so I'm not like also changes the way they respond. They kind of fall into the game and we end up picking up all the socks. No, we're in no danger of getting locked into a nag and shrug cycle. So I just want to invite you to have a little bit of a think about the way your brain might be wired to respond to your kid, and if there's any other way that you would like it to respond. So maybe you feel like you want to be a bit more playful or have a little bit more love in that relationship. And if you want to have a little bit more of that, you've got to do more of that, because your brain will then rewire, and it might be hard for like 30 days. You know, it might feel kind of slightly arduous, like, oh, my alarm on my phone's gone off, now I've got that obligatory fun. But after 30 days, you start looking at and hearing your kid, they're going to be filled with joy, you're going to be filled with joy, and you will experience a breaking of that behavior pattern that you're in with them. As always, I would love to hear from you. If you've got any parenting hacks or brain hacks or a killer book that you've read that you think I would enjoy, I'd love to hear. Thank you so much for watching. You can catch me over on Patreon. I'm currently making a cool resource for some of my patrons, all about creatively engaging with your menstrual cycle so that you can find bliss in it. And I've just opened registration for the Dancing Forest Sisterhood Retreat, which is going on tour next year. So we're going to be in New Zealand, we're going to be in the south of England, the north of England, and we're going to be in Oregon, USA. And I would absolutely love to see you there. So I'm going to link to that below if you're up for a little bit of a retreat for getting in touch with your creativity and your wildness and your intuition and your sisterhood. You will love this retreat. So you can check the link below. Wherever you are in the world, stay radical. Mwah.